Hello, welcome to Tutia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos. I have not recorded an episode in a little bit. Not since the Badia episode, and I'm not gonna lie, that was really fucking cool. Badia and also Luis Antonio Cortes, who I'm not as familiar with, I'm gonna be super honest. He is in a band that was like during the time of like emo and stuff, so like 2002, 2004, something like that. When did My Chemical Romance come out? Right. But anywho, that was a really cool episode and they were so kind and they were so sweet. And, I've been so busy with a coffee shop and my birthday present to myself is that this episode finally needs to come out. So this episode was recorded in like December of 2023. Okay. It's with my dear friend, Lou Ledesma. Y'all know her as the Death Witch. Lou is an incredible person and I'm very fortunate to know her. And, she's someone who we met online, but we've since met in person. And she's older than me. She has a lot of grace for me. And sometimes I really need it. It's interesting because I haven't been able to record and I've been just like focused on my life and building something. And that's been such a powerful feeling. And Lou's been doing that too. She's actually a co-owner in the Black Cauldron, which is a shop in Salem. And we love that. We love to see like unity of witches all over. And Lou is someone who deeply cares about community. And, she is a woman who is at a lot of different intersections. She has Iranian, Persian roots, been through a lot of shit, and she's still so kind and she is so amazing. And I think that that's why this episode has been so hard because she's a force to be reckoned with. But that being said, I feel like people who walk with a lot of power and they just have an aura to them and have done things and have been through things and still come out the other side, like believing the best in people, like wanting community, like giving, because she is someone that people are so grateful to her. And I know that she has a lot of people just like help her get the things that she wants, but she's also a bad bitch. Like she's building these things, right? Like, but this being said, she's such a badass. And I think the thing that's been so hard about this episode is like her and I share this common love of the show Gilmore Girls. And I still love Gilmore Girls. I'm so deeply in the fandom. And it's funny because, not to be an asshole, but most Gilmore Girls fans are boring, basic white people. But like Gilmore Girls is a cultural analysis of white feminism, right? Because you have Emily, who is this woman who experiences life. She's very rich. Her husband works in insurance. Like she's a housewife and, she's a boomer. Lorelai is a Gen X woman, who is like, I don't want to like benefit from my family's wealth. I don't want to like be in that world, And then you have Rory, who is a millennial who has like benefited from all of this generational wealth and all this generational privilege. And even though she, like Lorelai, is like, I'm not like everyone else. I don't have a trust fund, but like she does have a trust fund. But the point is that it's an analysis. And I love it because are they progressive? For sure, in some ways, but in a lot, hell fucking no. And what makes it even worse, like that other layer, is like all of my heroes disappoint me. And most of my heroes are white women. And I think that that's also why I've been digging deeper into finding more heroes that are like Black, queer women and just other individuals who have really contributed to the liberation of all people. But I mean, we're all human, right? We all fall short. So at the end of the day, you cannot separate the art from the person, right? You can't. But I do think that this is a show that has so many layers. And I do think that it is very important if you want to be a screenwriter one day. And that's something that I think about and I dabble with, right? Like the idea of doing that. I would love to do that. I don't think I'm brave enough yet. One day I'll have a story in me I think I want to tell. Maybe I already have it. But the point is that, through this conversation, I am trying to convince Lou that, and this is my theory, okay? This might be more future episodes that I do, and it's going to be called Witches in Plain Sight. And it's going to be shows that obviously have a layer of witchcraftery, if you will. Because, okay, here's my theory. My theory is that Lorelai is a witch, and she moves to Stars Hollow, which is a coven, and like there are all these different things throughout. And Amy Sherman Palladino really disappointed me because she's a Zionist and she's very pro-Israel. And on one hand, I get it. You know, the Jewish people have gone through atrocities. That being said, I saw the woman who plays, and I can't remember her name, from Harry Potter, who played the herbal teacher, made this comment about how in the end Hitler won because he's turned so many people of the Jewish faith into people that are okay with terrible things happening. And I think that's another reason why I haven't released this episode, because I'm going to start crying, you know, and it doesn't feel right. 2 years ago, when everything started in Palestine, I think we all thought it was going to get better, and it's not. And I think that it's one of those things that it makes you feel so powerless. And in this episode, we talk about so many badass ways that people were protesting, and just you would think that energy, you would think that effort would make a difference, but it's literally colonialism, and it's hard to sit here and it's hard to tell people that everything is going to be okay when we are literally watching people go through it. And obviously Palestine isn't the only place going through a genocide, you know, and it just sucks that so many people are against this, and it doesn't matter. And I think there was this part of me when I recorded that episode that hoped it would get better. And it's hard, right? Because we have to just keep going like everything's okay. And I light candles, and I know so many other witches who are doing things too. Sorry, this is so much. I feel like I've been locking all of this inside, and the humanity in me, it just like can't handle it anymore, you know? I think a big part of me hoped that things would get better, and we're not at the end, you know? There's people still alive, and maybe I saw this thing that said that Madonna had asked that if the Pope will go, because maybe the Pope could get it to stop, right? Sometimes I really can't believe the world that we live in. I mean, I can, right? But I also can't. And, you know, I think through all of this, myself, Lou, so many other people have realized that we have to build community. And I think that that's what a lot of us are trying to do, you know, like online communities, don't get me wrong, they're great, they're wonderful. But the other day in my shop, someone talked about some of their deepest, darkest secrets. And it's nice that I am creating a space where people feel love and support, and like they can talk to people who genuinely value them and care about them, and like are going to try to resolve situations, and aren't just going to like throw them away. And I do think that that's one of the things I don't love about the internet, is that it has made a lot of people feel like people are disposable. And I think that it's not just the internet, right? There's like so many other things that contribute to society and make us think people can just be thrown away. And I know I'm guilty of that sometimes too. You know, I think that living in Mexico has made me better. And that's, I think, what I love about Gilmore Girls too, that at its core, it's this community of people who just deeply care about each other, and they're weird and they're quirky. And it's interesting because I'm watching it again, right, to catch things I haven't caught and all the different times that I've watched it. And I have to say, when I watched it with Lou, I watched it a minimum of 10 times, you know, just in the background, like, you know, where I could focus in and out while doing other things, editing podcasts. And that's how I know that I'm neurodivergent as fuck, you know, like at the shop, I'll be making drinks and like still like, you know, quoting different parts. And, you know, it's just such a show that I hold so near and dear. And shout out to Kelly. You're actually the reason that I even got onto the show Gilmore Girls. And it's just become such a major part of my life. And a big part of me was like, hee hee ha ha, like, do I work in a coffee shop? Do I own a coffee shop? Because Gilmore Girls and coffee has been such a big part of my life. Who knows? But I am really excited for you to listen to this episode. It's taken 2 years to get here. And, you know, we can't change the world, but we can still care and we can still put energy into ending the suffering of other people. And at the end of the day, like the world is so big and we are not powerful when it's just one of us, right? I mean, arguably, yes and no. But there are things and people and things we can connect with that make us feel more connected to each other. And I think that this show does a really great job of showing us how important it is to connect with one another. So here you go. So I have to start off by saying that this is an episode that's been like 2 years coming. Cannot believe that it's been something we've been working on for this long, but I'm super glad to have you back on the show. You know her potentially as the Death Witch. Loretta, I love to call you Lou. Ledesma is here. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you, Bex. Always good to talk to you, to see you. It's especially good to see you. It's been like forever, and I'm really excited.
Thank you. You always give me comfort when shit is really fucked in the world because you are someone who constantly like walks with just a lot of spirits and energy. And I hope you realize that like you are such a guiding light. There are so many people who like look up to you and the things that you do. And, I think sometimes when we have this light, this energy, we're like, whatever, I'm just one person. But like you come with like this energy of like a whole fucking entourage. And I think that's because you just walk with a lot of energy.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I think it's definitely not something I would ever think about myself, but I appreciate that.
For sure. I hope that you are allowing yourself the space to be vulnerable because the state of the world is fucked. And I know that it's something that hits you especially close to home.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling in these trying times?
I'm cry every day. It's a funny as in like interesting place to be in this like place of observance, right? I feel like we have such a different view to what's going on now. I was telling my son just the other day, like, because he's got a lot of fears around everything that's going on, being Iranian American as well. One of the things that makes this so different is that we're seeing all of this in real time. And, it's not like the Vietnam War where we had to wait months and months and months for images to reach us. We're seeing these things happen in real time. And I think we've kind of gotten used to our phones and these apps as a way to like escape. And now these apps are turning into like the reliable news sources. I open my phone and, I purposely do seek out information. And then I go about my time after that, like quote unquote fact checking and doing my own quote unquote research. As terrifying and as heartbreaking as things are right now, I think that I also have so much hope. I see people, especially the younger people. I'm 44. So, the younger people in the world who have new ideas and have all of this energy and have built the momentum to create real change. And not only to create change, but one of the most important things I think is to create unity. That younger people are doing a really good job of reminding all of us that we're not that different. As sad and as heartbroken as I am, as hopeless as I feel at times, I also feel a lot of determination and I feel a lot of gratitude. I think a lot of us who are first generation American, who have parents who have given up a lot for us to be here, sometimes take it for granted. I mean, I for sure do. It opens old wounds and it's triggering. And I also feel a lot of shame around a lot of what's happening. And that's something that I have had a really hard time speaking to, just being a proud Iranian. There's still a lot of weird politics in my country of origin that I have to contend with. And there's a lot of ancestral trauma that I have to contend with as well. One of the big things that I struggle with is that some of the harm that my ancestors have done also. I'm always trying to heal. I'm always trying to find new pathways to heal. And I hope that other people feel empowered to do that as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. I want to address two things that you said. The first being that like the youth, the younger people, honestly are giving me a lot of hope. I agree with you on that. I don't know if you saw, but the way that these, I don't want to say kids because that seems like infantilizing, but the way a lot of these young people are protesting is so cool and it's so radical. Like I saw, I think it was in the Bay Area, they just left their cars, threw the keys over, and they were just like, yeah, do something about it. And I love that because I know myself, like I would be like, okay, and this is how much it's going to be towed, and this is how much. And like I'm a millennial, so I guess bought into the bullshit, and like like financially surviving is one of the things that I will say at times brings me shame, and that's the other thing I want to address because all of this brings a lot of shame because for a lot of us who are old enough to remember all of the events around 9/11, there were a lot of times where I didn't speak up because I remember being youthful and being like, if I stand up or if I say something that makes me then a target and I'm, like a marginalized person too. So this time around, I'm doing a lot more. I'm saying a lot more when I see folks being like, just ignorant to the fucked up history that is the Middle East. And that's the thing is lately, it's like everyone's become an expert when they haven't been paying attention to anything that's been happening there. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And, and I'm not going to pretend that I know the most because I don't, I still have a lot of learning to do myself. Like one thing that I want to recommend is if a lot of people don't know about like the different political turmoil that's happening or that's happened in Iran that is happening to this day.
Mhm.
Persepolis is a really great resource, It's a graphic novel. I think it's kind of an easier swallow, so I recommend that to people. This has been a very like mind-blowing time because it really is making me see who is so susceptible to propaganda.
Yes. I think one of the speaking to propaganda, and I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things I really want to encourage people to do is to like think before they repost. Check where you're reposting from. See how the other statements that have come from that account or that person, see how that feels in your body. It's so easy to talk about a free Palestine without participating in anti Semitism. And that's one of the things that I think is so like, it makes me want to scream. And it's also so easy to talk about how we want to protect our Jewish siblings, our Arab siblings, our Muslim siblings, and still speak out against a government and against genocide and call for an immediate ceasefire. One thing, this like calling for a ceasefire truly is an act of radical love because I'm not okay with saying what I'm saying. I'm not okay with watching people be harmed in the name of their government. And it's like, it just makes me think about, the Trump era hashtag not my president. And it's like, okay, not my president, but we also need to remember to remove people from our government. So I think that that's so important. And I have Jewish friends who are terrified right now. And I have Arab friends and family who are terrified right now. And I have Persian Iranian friends and family that are like, there's so many layers to this, and I'm terrified right now. And something I want to say too, and people will not like what I'm about to say, but we can simply say this is wrong and we are demanding a ceasefire. And that is straightforward and that is simple. However, when we try to simplify the politics and the history of the region, so much gets lost. The complexity of humans and the complexity of the region can exist at the same time as us simply saying we demand a ceasefire and we will not tolerate genocide.
Very well said, because there are a lot of complex feelings. And I think that it's one of those things that we have to address that even if people don't agree with Israel, politics, the 1,200 people that were killed, like that's the largest group of Jewish people that have been murdered to that capacity since the Holocaust. So it is a huge loss. And, I really just hope that at the end of this, we don't lose our humanity.
Yes.
And I know it's hard, but we also have to be compassionate because a lot of people who are Israeli are also indoctrinated into a certain belief.
Propaganda is powerful. And when I think about propaganda, in the US, 9/11 is a great example of that. The post 9/11 world that we just tolerated and all of us accepted. We were like, oh, yeah, like we absolutely have to have our privacy and our rights violated so that we can be safe. So many of us bought that hook, line, and sinker. So and I mean, the reality is like, whether we want to admit it or not, like that pop-up ad on Instagram, that's propaganda too. We've all fallen victim to propaganda on some level. And even if it's not on like this huge mass level, still an experience that we can recognize. So in that recognition, we really need to be cautious about what we're accepting to be fact and what we're accepting to be true. And I think, it is really refreshing to see a lot of young people saying like, wait a minute, this isn't hitting right. I've got questions, and no, I'm not going to not ask those questions just so that you can be comfortable.
I think, like Gen Z, I think that one of the biggest things that is on their side is that they were born to like a post 9/11 world, the majority of them, or they were too young to remember. So it's like
Yeah.
they're growing up in a time where they're like, this doesn't make sense because they didn't buy into the bullshit of like the Patriot Act and stuff in the way that we did. And so like, yeah,
Mhm.
they're asking the questions that we were too naive to ask, because also think about it, like back in 2001, like we didn't have the access. I mean, we had the internet, but not the way that we do now at our fingertips. So I don't know. Yeah, like propaganda and like stereotypes and,
Mhm.
thinking about the things that like keep that going, and how media, whether it be the news, but even like television and stuff, and to kind of transition is kind of the reason that we're here today. And, I'd love talking to you about just anything, but to make it a little bit lighter, I have been thinking about how media is this big thing that sort of shows us how the world is. And okay, so Gilmore Girls. Yeah, you and I both love Gilmore Girls. What is your connection to the show Gilmore Girls?
My daughter and I started watching Gilmore Girls when she was really young. I don't even remember how I found it. It might have been her who found it first. I don't actually remember. But we used to watch it together. And it was when my kids were young, like life was very, very different for me. I had to be considerably more like hidden in my work and my practice. And, life was not as beautiful for me as it is now. So Gilmore Girls was always kind of this like nice little escape. And I've always had you could call it like a small town kink. I've always fantasized about living in a small town and living on the East Coast and, living somewhere where it was like forever fall. Gilmore Girls really encompassed all of that, and being close to my daughter and being a much younger parent. I had my daughter when I was 18. So there were a lot of things that were really relatable about the show.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And a lot of you might be being like, okay, so how did we get here? Why are we talking about Gilmore Girls? Okay, for two reasons. The first one being, these are my hot takes. My first one being that I personally think that Gilmore Girls is a very critical analysis of white feminism
Mhm.
through the decades, because Emily is a wealthy boomer who's still very much connected to her colonizer origin story. Lorelai's
Mhm.
Gen X, she's a mother who she had her struggles. I won't say she won't, but she basically cosplayed poverty and essentially, finger quote, big finger quotes, pulled herself up by her bootstraps to succeed. And then you have Rory, who is this privileged millennial who's burnt out. She's lost most of her serotonin by age like 8, probably, because she was parentified by having to take care of like her emotionally immature mother. So I really do think
Mhm.
like if you and I did an episode a while back about how like shows, TV, movies, all of these things, like they really do kind of explain your perception of the world. So it's like if you don't understand a lot of things about American nuance, I think that this is a great show to understand some of that. And two, the more fun take is we came with receipts to prove this. My theory is that Lorelai ran away from her puritanical upbringing to join the coven that is Stars Hollow. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I mean, first of all, the name of the town is Stars Hollow. Second of all, so her name is Lorelai, which I believe she was named after the bay laurel tree. And that is already like the bay laurel, the bay leaf is a key ingredient in Crown of Success. So she was already pre-named to be someone who is successful and she works her magic for success. And I didn't write down the name of the episode, but they sneak in there Viva Glam lipstick. So being a witch, I think there is a care for humanity and there is an awareness of HIV/AIDS and things that affect people who are underserved that her mother for sure does not have. So them sneaking Viva Glam lipstick in there to me was like a big like, all right, Lorelai, I see you. You buy Viva Glam.
Love that. Yes. And very much the glamour magic energy. I know that the name Lorelai can also mean like temptress or alluring, like enchantress. I think I also read somewhere that there's like something associated where it's like this legend. It's like a destroyer of men. I'm like, love it.
Oh,
Love it.
love.
So before we each respectively give more of a deep dive, in case you've never seen Gilmore Girls, it is a American television show that ran from October 5th, 2000 to May 15th, 2007. It is about, like I said earlier, a mother and daughter and sort of their like dynamics. Okay, do you want to start with some of the details that you caught while rewatching it that sort of help prove that she's a witchy bitch?
You know, from the very beginning, her working towards and speaking into fruition, her owning the inn, that was something that she talked about all the time. That was something that she was casting the spell to be an inn owner from the very beginning. And also, I think her obsession with coffee.
Yes, coffee's a potion.
It is. It is a potion. And the land that she lived on, you know, there was always something going on the land. Even though the land wasn't necessarily the main character of the show, it was still, her house was a character, right? There was always like things were in certain places. A lot of what they did took place in the house. The house was almost like this big protective spirit that different people like Luke would come in and take care of it. There was that episode where he was like rebuilding the porch. There was always something going on in the house. So she was always like laying down work. The house was super important in the backdrop of pretty much every story. But also like the trees that were all around the house, her and Rory too. Like Rory, I think, was a lot more magical. I mean, she was a writer. She wanted to be a reporter. I'm Persian. We can bring everything back to being Persian. The reporter that she looked up to was Christiana Mampour, who is a famous Iranian journalist. Just the writing aspect that they both had, the way that she looked at clothes and just magical adornment in general. You know, she didn't conform as far as her clothing went. She didn't conform in any way, but I think that we wouldn't call it like fashion necessarily because it wasn't like a fashion forward show. That wasn't the point of it. But the way that she adorned herself was really, really purposeful. And it was completely different from everyone around her.
Okay, I love that you brought up the thing about the clothes because yes, she has so many different pieces that she like references throughout that one, like really just state her personality and made her like stand out. I want to circle back because you mentioned something about the land and I have a reference to this in my notes because there's an episode in season 1, episode 6. Babette reminisces about when Rory was 10 and there was a fairy circle and how Rory is trying to feed the fae like a PB&J because she was just like lonely. And so, yeah, I think you're right. There was very much a connection to the land and the energies there. I also want to bring up a lot of things I didn't because I'm embarrassed to say this, but when, this has been a long time coming, but like I probably watched it back to back to back to back at least 8 times, literally 8 times. I've definitely given too much of myself to this show, but the fact that she ran away and worked at a place called the Independence Inn And also, can I just say that I don't know, Amy Sherman Palladino, the Creato, and her husband Daniel, like they have to be witchy in some aspect because, okay, Lorelai's parents' house, the number is 61, which is the angel number for family, introspection, stability. And I mean, obviously, Lorelai is not the most stable person,
Right.
but we do see throughout the course of the show that, that starts changing. She starts being a lot more self-aware, so that's like something fun. Also, Lorelai is a Taurus and Luke is a Scorpio. So they
Mm.
are sister signs, they're fixed signs. So that also gives a lot of context into who they are because they are both very equally stubborn.
Huh, that explains so much about Luke.
I'm telling you, I watched that a lot, and the only reason I caught that is because there's a reference where Kirk is talking to him, and he's like, "Why can Lorelai pour her own coffee and I can't?" It's like, "Because we're dating." He's like, "Well, I mean, like." It's around the context of like, oh, people who you sleep with can like go behind, and he's like, well, I don't know much about you. I know you're a Scorpio and I know you like this. And he's like, well, now it's definitely a no. So a lot of things I really did, have to pay attention for. Another thing that I want to bring up is like Lane and Mrs. Kim, they are Korean. And, I think that a lot of other like people from other countries, they tend to have this belief in magic, like even if it scares them. And I do think that it's interesting that like Mrs. Kim is very weary of them, but she trusts, Lorelai enough to let her daughter around to be influenced by her. And also you see how like through the friendship with Lorelai and Rory, they also break their own generational curses, right? Because we see with Lane, like she hides a lot from her mother, like she very much doesn't want to let her like see who she really is. But then there's an episode where we see that with Mrs. Kim too, because her mother is a Buddhist, whereas like Kim is a 7-day Adventist. And so you see like she has her own stuff, she's working through. So I really loved it. I'm like, yeah, because I mean, that would make more sense for if she is the witchy bitch that we are saying she is, and she is, that she would be more trusting.
Yeah, and I think Mrs. Kim was actually one of my favorite characters, even though she wasn't like a main character. The way that she is so protective of her daughter and the way that she like loves Rory, but doesn't necessarily think that Rory is like got the best examples. And I also love that Mrs. Kim is an antiques dealer. So she's got all of these ancient things around her and she knows exactly what she's got. She is obviously really, really aware of antiques and where they come from and the value that the old things bring into the world, the modern world.
So lately I've been proclaiming this more. I love the term found witch because I feel like there are some people that just find different things that like know whether it's historic value or even sentimental value or whatever, even the novelty of things. Like I definitely get that energy from Mrs. Kim, like because like you said, she has all of these things around her and they're all like representative of a different time. And I feel like what I love about antique stores is that they can very much be a time capsule for like a different time. So yes, I thank you for mentioning that. Yes, I think that's very much true. Another thing that I want to mention is there's some specific quotes in here that I need to throw out. So this is one that I liked. In the pilot, Lorelai says, "Behold the healing powers of a bath," and she says it in regards to Luke, because he like takes a bath and he like dresses up or something. And yeah, this girl knows that like the healing powers of a bath because like a baño, like there is something so healing about water.
Yes.
And so I just thought that that was sort of funny. I feel like that also adds to my case. Let's see. In addition to that, so something, I don't know if you realize this because we don't get all of the information about Lorelai. We get that her birthday is April 25th, 1968, so she's a Taurus, which also, she's connected to the earth. That makes sense because she can smell fucking snow and like you said, the connection to the land, her house. Rory, we get her big three, which are she is a Libra sun, a Pisces moon, and a Virgo ascending.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I thought so too. Also, I am of the school of thought because Pisces and Virgo are sister signs, and I feel like they're kind of the meanest of the zodiac. And we have that episode where Rory writes that review of the ballet and she compares the ballerina to a hippo. So we definitely see her mean qualities come out to play. Same with Lorelai. And I want to kind of like circle back to the whole white feminism thing because they are very critical of other women.
Yeah, yeah. They're very, very critical of other women, and they have, like, Rory in particular, like her, and I mean, they did end up being friends, in the end, but like she had this like arch rivalry with, oh God, I forget her name now.
Oh, Paris.
Yes, with Paris. And it was so mean. And they were both so awful to each other. And when really, like, the problem was not really either of them. So there is some of that, like, mean girl just shittiness towards other women that's in there for sure.
That's something that's sort of throughout, which is such a bummer. But I also think that unfortunately that is white feminism for you, like there is a lot of like sense of competition and not that idea of like sisterhood or like uplifting other people. Another thing that's very prominent in the show that's more of a positive is music. It's such a crucial part of the show. Lately, I've been referring to music as sound sorcery because it allows you to invoke so much and say so many things, and it is like a medicine. Right now I'm really stuck. I was watching an episode of Malcolm in the Middle, and the character of Dewey says that like music is feeling, art, and beauty. And I was like, yeah, that is what music is. It invokes so much out of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the soundtrack was so good, but also how important music was to Lorelai and Rory too, but also Lane.
Yes.
Lane would hide her music in the floorboards. She did everything she possibly could to hold on to her identity through music. And they went to different concerts and there were different performers. Music was really, really key to the whole show.
One of the things that's the constant in addition to like all of the different romantic relationships, right? And we see both Rory and Lorelai go through their respective like relationships. One thing I want to bring up is in season 2 episode 4. So this is after Max and Lorelai end their engagement. They end up at a B&B and Lorelai writes in the guest book, "Satanic forces are at work here." To which Rory's like uncomfortable and she changes it and she's like, "Sat and forever am work here." And she's like, "That doesn't make any sense." And she's like, "Yeah, but it doesn't invoke the Dark Prince, so I think that it's preferable." And I just thought that was so funny.
Oh my God. That Max and Lorelai relationship that was a doozy.
I think it's one of those things, right, where it's just like sometimes you want someone to work out, but I'm also just like the lack of boundaries that Lorelai had at so many times during the show. And again, that brings back the Rory was so parentified she had to talk to her mother like a child at times. But like, Lorelai, how did you not see that dating your daughter's teacher is a bad idea? Like, what?
Yeah, there's no way that was going to go well. Like, come on. And, being that it was also like her teacher at Chilton,
Yeah,
already really, really hard for Rory to acclimate to and to blend in and make friends and be part of that whole elitist coven. Like, that was already so hard. And then she threw that on top of it.
yeah. Just really not thinking about how the greater impact, and I think that that's one of the things. It's funny for a Taurus, like she really, when I read that, I was like, I mean, yeah, that makes sense and stuff, but at the same time, it's like you really don't think about like which for me anyway, I've never met a Taurus that's quite like that. So I really wish we could know the rest of her chart. I think that would like give us a little bit more context into her.
What do you think her Venus was in?
I want to say that it's giving Capricorn because I feel like Capricorns are the kind of people that like they will burn everything down to the ground, including themselves. And I feel like that's sort of the energy she kind of gives in love.
Yeah, see that.
What about you? What do you think?
I was thinking Venus and Gemini.
I could see that too, though. Yeah.
Just getting bored, feeling unfulfilled, needing and creating chaos sometimes because she was bored, or just creating chaos in general. Venus in Gemini is my Venus is in Gemini.
Okay.
My husband's Venus is in Gemini, and that's why we work.
Always causing a little chaos for the love of it, you know?
Yeah. It's funny, like both of us having our Venus in Gemini, we're like, hey, the way that we cause chaos now is like, let's just not go to work and take a weekend trip. So being adventurous is how our Venus and Gemini shows up for each other, thank God.
Love that. Oh, man. You know, I think maybe because my Venus is in Leo. And I'm like, I don't know if I could be with someone whose Venus is in Leo. That seems like a lot. I think we'd constantly get into fights over who has to like demonstrate their love in like a bigger way. And that also seems really overwhelming. So I need to, I don't know, maybe like Venus and Gemini is the way to go. I'm going to start asking, okay, first of all, I have this thought that I am attracted to all types of people, but like men are typically the ones who seek me out. And I feel like when a cis man knows his natal chart, I'm like, this bitch is run through. This bitch is run through. Like he knows entire, like, and I always feel a little like, about it. But yeah.
That actually, first of all, I love hearing you refer to this man as being run through.
Say that enough about men, and I feel like we should.
We absolutely should. Oh my God, that was hilarious.
Okay, one other thing that I want to point out, because I thought that this is funny, because there's the episode where Suki asks Lorelai and Rory to be the godmothers to the babies, and it's when they've had their falling out. This is season 6, and the Reverend asks for their religious affiliation, and Lorelai says, "We're a little lapsed from religion. I have a strong belief in good over evil. If I were asked to choose sides." And then Rory's response is she mentions that she's read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then when she was asked to renounce Satan, they kind of hesitate.
Oh God, I love the hesitation. Also, Suki is a kitchen witch.
Oh, 100%.
The way that she talks to her ingredients, the way that she cherishes every fruit, every vegetable, every herb, she like adores them all like children. She conjures everything. It's very evident.
The episode where Jackson sleeps with a zucchini because they're so worried about how the zucchini soup is going to turn out. Okay, one other thing that this just made me think of, people might disagree with me on this, but I don't think that I don't like Jackson and Suki together, first of all.
Okay.
I don't like them together because he lied about having a vasectomy, and that I feel like is a form of stealthing, first of all. Secondly, there's the episode where she makes ratatouille from the vegetables of another farmer, and it's her best, and everyone compliments on her. And she's like, "Oh, don't eat it. Like, it's terrible," when she's like talking to Jackson. So I feel like that was like an indicator that they weren't really the best match. But people can have their own thoughts. But yeah, I don't like them together.
I forgot about the vasectomy thing.
Yeah.
That's right. Ew. Huh.
I've got a lot of flack from people, and like, because I've been in some like Gilmore Girls discussion groups, and I'm like, he's not a good person, like that's fucked up. And people are like, are we talking about the same person? And it's really made me realize that like white women specifically make a lot of excuses for men in a way that really kind of makes me feel the ick. And it also just makes me realize that like a lot of women really do settle for the bare minimum. I saw this meme and it was like, you're either going to have a man or you're going to have standards, and you're probably not going to have both.
Ooh, yeah, that's true. That is true. Which is like such a shame,
I think a lot of men have just grown like they are infantilized or treated with kid gloves in a way that like we just aren't. We are
Mhm.
taught to take the responsibility in a lot of different things. And yeah, I don't know. Lately, I've been very like anti a lot of men because they don't take accountability, or it's very easy for them to like, oh, well, my ex was the problem, and like not realize like you're the same common abusive factor.
Mm.
So getting off on my tangent, but yeah, so like I don't like him, but I also think that that being said, I think that Jackson is also very much a magic practitioner too, because he's very connected to his vegetables. He sleeps with them to like make sure that they're coming up and like growing in the way that they're supposed to. So there's just so much magic in the show. Another person who I feel like is magical is Babette. She has a
Oh
cat
yeah.
who is like her familiar. She's very attached to her gnomes. She talks about how she's just sort of like the keeper of the gossip amongst some of the other characters, but like yeah, she just has like a lot of like witch energy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And her connection to movement. She's also a rebel. She is also like very grandiose. She also made her own way. I feel like there's some hinting that almost everyone has escaped from something and ended up in Stars Hollow.
I'm glad that you referenced that because there is this story, I guess, at one point where Babette is talking about how before she was with Maury and before that she was like in a cult or something. So yes, I think that you're right. I also feel that energy with Mrs. Patty.
Mm. Mrs. Patty, she's for sure like I kind of forgot about her actually, which is ridiculous because she's like a main character. But Mrs. Patty, her connection to movement and her connection to like I feel like she's not as grandiose in the same way. Like she's not as like scattered, but she did all kinds of stuff like in the art scene.
Yeah, Kirk. Kirk is like a shapeshifter.
Oh yeah. Yep, literally.
I love the references to all the different jobs that he has. I love Lorelai and Rory, like, you know, their whole story and stuff, but there are times like you said this kind of before, like some of the characters, the other characters of the show really at times make it more worth watching than just
Yeah.
the dynamics of mother and daughter. Like the Lane episodes are great. I do feel like the thing I don't love is that they set her up with Zach, and I feel like she deserves such a richer storyline than like, you know, she got married and had kids, and like the first time she had sex, she had twins.
Yeah, I know that was kind of a letdown. Like honestly, like the things that Lane could have done and like would have done, like if she wasn't written by someone else, if she was writing her own story truly, like she I don't know that she would have even stayed in Stars Hollow.
Yeah.
She would have like gone off and started her own thing.
Yeah, just taking the world by storm for sure. Okay, what else do I have? Oh, I do also want to mention because I mentioned the house number. Luke, his diner, the number is 156. That angel number is connected to like reaching your destination within the right time, which is also like his, you know, that you sort of see that play out. Like he has to kind of come to terms with the things that he wants to do. Again, he is a Scorpio, so a lot of fixed energy, very fluid. Again, I really would love at some point, if the world grants it to happen, to sit down with Amy Sherman Palladino. It's like, how much thought did you put into all of these little things? Did people notice that? Am I the first to notice this? Because I was just like so impressed with all of these little symbolistic things. Okay, I think it's funny that it's also mentioned that like Lorelai is not good with animals. Like that's a common running joke throughout like the whole thing. And Paul Anka becomes her familiar.
Yes, in a very, very big way. And the name Paulinka, like, it's such an odd name for an animal. It's not even, I want to know where, like, why they chose to go that direction. It's definitely not the typical, like, TV animal name.
Personally, before I watched, I love that you're holding your cat now, by the way. I didn't even know who Paul Anka was. And so until like, you know, I did watch this show. And that's the thing about the show too, is like I love how quick they talk. I love all of the references. I love that this is a show that I've watched over and over and over since I was in my teens, and I still catch references. And, you know, like it's such a good show. It's one of those things I think you can catch something new each time. It's
And it
just
feels good. good. It's like a nice escape, which I think is magic in itself. Like when I'm like going to my comfort show, it's that one. When I'm going for something that's like not stressful, but that's relatable, it's that one. When I want something that I can also feel like the connection to my family with, because my daughter and I, watch a show together, I go to that. So there's so many like personal layers for that too, but it's just really like a comforting kind of offers like what the world could be if we took the time to reimagine. Like we could all reimagine our own version of a small town with the best qualities of a small town, which really, comes down to building community. And the way that Stars Hollow was such a tight-knit community. Everybody knew each other's names. Everybody, they knew that they could always call on their neighbor. And I feel like as a society, we are moving a bit more towards that as well. We're moving back to community.
I agree. And I really do love like the focus on the community, the fact that like they all do come together. The town hall like episodes are always some of my favorite when like they all come together. Like there's an episode where it's like the bells ring in the middle of the night and everyone gets out of bed at like, 3 a.m. or whatever to like come to this town meeting. Like you said, like it's this very whimsical place that just seems like very unlikely. I think we could get there. Is there anything else about the show specifically that you caught that you'd like to share?
Another point is that the leaders in community are not straight cis men. I think that the leaders in community are femme, alluded queer, and I think that also speaks to our case. And I also think that was pretty forward for the time.
There were a lot of things about the show because again, it was the time of like 2000 to 2007. There were a lot of things that were very progressive and it is really cool. Again, I guess this town is like a little utopia for what community could be like if we really wanted it to be, and I don't know. I really just one day hope to live in a place like Stars Hollow. Not everyone loves small town charm, but I think there's something nice about it,
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all build our own little Stars Hollow, right, in our own communities, and then the micro affects the macro.
Very well said. Unrelated, I want to share some stuff with you. I really did do a deep dive of the Gilmores because one thing that I want to address is like there is an episode where Logan's family doesn't think that Rory is good enough. And she's like,
Yeah.
My family came over on the Mayflower, which was in 1629. And that's not true. Gilmore family ties are back to Paisley, Scotland. John Gilmore arrived in Massachusetts in 1700. Not a fun fact. That side of the family had ties to enslaving people. There was an enslaved person named Tobias Gilmore who was enslaved by the Gilmore family circa 1757. And he later ended up becoming free because he fought in the Continental Army. And because of his military service, he ended up being free. Additionally, there is a reference, I don't know if you remember in one of the episodes where she is calling the family to let them know that someone has died. And she was talking about how the Massachusetts Gilmore basically think that everyone's going to go to hell. And I thought that was sort of funny.
I remember that. That's right.
Yeah. Also, in real life, the Massachusetts Gilmores are tied to Ocean Sprays, the juice.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. Dang, Bex, you went all in.
I really, really did. Okay, so the town of Stars Hollow, it's a town supposedly in Connecticut, which was formed circa 1779. And for perspective, Connecticut was sort of established in 1636, specifically Hartford, which is where Emily and Richard live. So
yeah. I love Connecticut. It's so pretty.
I've never been, but it's on the list. The only place that I've been to out east is Massachusetts. I've spent some time in Boston. I've spent some time in Salem because of course.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do Salem.
All of the Gilmore information that I could find. Girl, it's been like 2 years, so I had the time to like just to see what the internet could provide me.
2 years almost to the 2. Isn't that wild?
Okay, I cannot believe that time has gone by this fast because that also reminds me that this podcast has existed in some form since like 2000 and that's like 3 years and it doesn't feel like it's been that long.
Wow. That's amazing.
I mean, I think it's one of those things that, like, I don't want to be like when time flies when you're having fun, because the last 3 years have not necessarily been the most fun. But, I am very grateful for this show and like the great people I've been able to meet, yourself included. So I am, and so many people have told me that like the thing that they like about my show is that like the takes, the commentary, the information. And so, it's great to know that like people are enjoying what I'm putting out, and that the fact that we're able to do this a third time, I'm just like, this was a good day,
I love all the people that you've introduced us to, and I love all the thought that you put into everything that you do. And I think that you are one of the people that has a genuine love for the community, but also has you
A lot of
see what's
critiques. I have a lot of
yeah,
critiques, yeah.
but you're real about it, you know?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I take that and I accept that. Because I think it's one of those things, right? Like when we care about a community, we have to be critical of it. We can't just exist pretending that the problems don't exist. And that's the way that we make it better,
Mhm.
And okay, so moving away from Gilmore Girls and stuff and kind of circling back to the things we were discussing earlier, I saw this thing that really, and I would love your perspective on it. It was saying that like a lot of people in spiritual, witchy, whatever you want to call it, spaces haven't spoken out about what's happening in the world because a lot of people had this thought that they would be the ones centered in the collective awakening of the world. And because we are having this collective awakening happen in this holy land, that has a lot of
Mhm.
cultural significance, to civilization, to religion, whatever, humanity, that this is happening there, a lot of people don't want to address it because they feel frustration. They feel anger that they were not the ones to like bring about this change. And it's very sad, like I really do think that, and I know that you hold this idea too, that if we are going to take on the term witch, bruja, we are taking on all of the oppression and all of the hurt that's happened to people that, whether they use the title or not, was inflicted upon them. And so justice is something that is so important to myself, and I know to you too. So I think it's important to speak out when we see fucked up things happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's so many layers to spiritual community, and I think, good, bad, and ugly. But I also think that a lot of people in the spiritual community are, how do I say this? I think it's a lot of responsibility that people who got involved in spirituality didn't necessarily realize that they were going to have to confront today. And I do think that I have conversations with people every day for the last over a month now. And some of those people are vocal about what's going on, and some of them aren't. Some of them are, afraid for their own safety. Some of them feel like they don't really know what to say. And that's, something that I can relate to also. I'm 100% sure that I don't know everything, that I don't know all the facts. I'm not a historian. I'm Middle Eastern, but I don't know everything about the Middle East. And I'm not one of the great political minds, right? And I think that people are so afraid of being wrong. And I think that there has been a lot of shame that is put on us when we are, quote unquote, wrong. So I think one of the ways that we can work on, the expectations that we have of the people that we look up to in community to speak out is to allow for those quote unquote leaders in community to allow for them to have room to also be incorrect. I think that, cancel culture it's different now. I think it looks different now, but I think that we have to allow for new information to come through. And I think that we have to allow for ourselves and others to change their minds as new information comes through. I know that, I have friends who, I really want to be cautious about speaking about this like this is a new occurrence, because what's been happening in Gaza is not a new thing. But I have friends who, the initial response was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like, this is terrible. And they're not wrong, but as they received more information, people were able to pull away and take a step back and allow for their minds to be open to other people's suffering as well. And I think that that's, another thing also, and I've definitely felt the pressure too, as someone that is open online about my spirituality and my spiritual practice. I am so aware of not wanting to harm anyone unless it's justified. I'll throw down roots on someone if it's justified. I don't mean like that, but I do mean that I am so aware of not wanting to perpetuate or allow or make room for or trigger more harm in humanity. And it's something that, every time the one post that I did make, and then anytime I reshare to my stories, I genuinely think about what is the energy that's attached to this message. Is this message something that putting out? Am I leading from a place of demanding justice and being angry about, and that justified anger about what's happening, and saying, fuck no, I don't accept this, and fuck these governments? But am I leading also from a place that helps to cultivate healing and understanding and unity and love? And I think that we can, as spiritual people, we can embody both. I feel so much rage at what's happening, and it breaks my fucking heart, and it makes me so fucking angry that I am witnessing genocide in real time, the year 2023, and not just in Gaza, but in other places in the world. But I also just so desperately want for us all to be able to see ourselves in each other's eyes. So desperately, I just want for all of us to be able to see humanity in one another.
100%. And I'll say this again, like, I really hope that this doesn't remove us of our humanity, because to circle back to Gilmore Girls, one of the things that I really love about the show is that, because again, it's such a small town, that all of the different religious leaders use the same building. Like, there's a reference where it's like the rabbi, it has to or he's telling the reverend, like, hey, you got to wrap it up, it's our turn now. And I think it's implied that there's a mosque too, but I could be mistaken. But I really think that there's obviously a lot of history that respectively we don't know, and I really wish that we could get to a point where we could stop letting these differences in beliefs separate people and divide people and destroy people, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of people who have faith, a lot of people who are religious are trying to have like this understanding and of this greater good. And, there are people who hide behind their faith and do awful atrocities. But I think that there are so many more people in the world who really do want to help and make the world a little bit more beautiful and have more humanity. And I have to remind myself of this every day, is that like progress is slow and a lot of people are waking up, and, it's important to have discussions like this and to connect, because that's the only way that we will change the world, is by like having conversations, being vulnerable, and trying to find the humanity in each other and in fictional characters sometimes, because fictional characters can be like this great example of what the world could be like if we just allowed it to.
Absolutely. I think, for all the flaws of social media and all the flaws of the internet, it's a tool that's allowed us to see that we're not all that different.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. In the show notes, you're going to find a couple of different places and GoFundMes of people who are living in Palestine right now and just like living hell on earth. And if you can support, please support. I always appreciate all of the people who support my work, whether it be this podcast, whether it be, the tarot readings that I offer, whether it be the coffee shop. I could not do any of what I do without you, the people who listen, the people who support, the people who donate. I have a Patreon if that's something you're interested in. I share blogs sometimes. I share recipes. If it's something that you would like to check out, I'll include the links for all of that in the show notes. I want to thank you for all of the support that y'all have been giving me. Many of you as far back as like my first podcast, which was called Explain to Me. Some of you from my radio days, and one of the things that I really enjoy is that I really do feel like my purpose, if you could call it that, is to just live a life that is authentically my own. And what I mean by that is just like, I do the things that make me happy, and making coffee makes me happy, and making pastries makes me happy, and being able to key about art makes me happy, and being able to support local artists and artisans make me happy. And, being just like, I wanted to say fucking weirdo, and maybe I am, but I love being person who loves Halloween so much because I saw this meme the other day and it was like, leftists like Halloween because it's a redistribution of resources. It is community organizing. It is a Satan showing up being sexy. And yes, yes, and yes. And I don't know. I'm not a very religious person. I think that's pretty obvious. But I do think that religion holds value for a lot of people, right? And I also think that it is important that we show up in the ways that really make us happy. And I think the biggest reason why I love Halloween so much, other than, I'm a fucking witch, I think it's like when I was a kid growing up, I lived in the suburbs of St. Louis, and the neighborhood that I grew up in was like middle class, and it was really cool because I remember the houses that had the big candy bars, right, or the people who gave away like hot chocolate and sodas and hot dogs and were able to like give back. And like even then I just knew that was so badass, that like you don't have to do this and you're choosing to do this for the love of the holiday, for the love of your community, for the love of whatever. And I think something in me from that point when I was a little kid was like, one day I want to do that. And last year I got to do that. And this year I'm going to do this. And I just really think that in a time where it feels like we don't have control over anything, and that we are just like at times victims of just all of the terrible shit that is happening around us, like we have to find joy in each other, and we have to find joy in ourselves, and we have to find joy where we can. Because especially for my friends in the States, I'm in Mexico now. I'm in Tequila, shout out. I do think it's important to realize that like the authoritarian fascist government wants you to feel hopeless, and it wants you to feel like there is nothing you can do. So please, please, please figure out ways that you can support and love each other. I'm supporting and loving from afar. If you want to get in contact, I would love to. So yeah, please. I, again, want to thank you, and I hope that this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know if you want to hear more episodes with this theme of Witches in Plain Sight. All right. Have a great one. Bye, y'all.